Hi, I'm Patrick Briscoe, and welcome to the Canadian Retirement Roadmap. I want you to picture something for a moment. You're sitting at your kitchen table on a Saturday morning, the mortgage is paid off, the house is quiet, and you're looking at your retirement plan thinking, we have $400,000 in our investment accounts, but the house is worth $900,000. Almost 2/3 of everything we own is tied up in the walls around us. That's the situation Tom and Diane found themselves in when they came to see me last year. They weren't broke, they weren't struggling, but they felt pretty stuck. Rich on paper, tight on cash flow. And if that sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. For a lot of Canadian retirees, the family home is their single largest asset. And yet it's the one asset that doesn't deposit a cent into their bank account every month. So today, we're going to look at 5 practical ways that you can put that home equity to work, whether you want to stay in your home or move on to something new. We'll talk about the tax angles, the emotional side, and most importantly, how each option fits in a broader retirement plan. I've also written a chapter on this exact topic in a book called Financial Success for Retirees. If you would like a complimentary copy, head over to bayswaterwealth.ca/podcast. Fill in the book request form, and my team will get one over to you in the mail. Before we get into the 5 strategies, I want to spend a minute on why this topic matters so much and why it's more emotional than other big financial decisions. For most Canadians, buying a home was the first big financial commitment that they ever made. You saved for the down payment, you raised your kids in there, you painted the walls, fixed the roof, shoveled the driveway for 30 winters. So your home isn't just an asset on a spreadsheet, it's a piece of your identity. And that's what makes this conversation pretty tricky. When I sit down with families and say, have you thought about how your home fits into your retirement income plan? Sometimes there's a pretty long pause, and the answer is often, not really. We just assumed that we would stay here. And maybe you will stay, and that's a perfectly valid choice for most people. But even if you plan to age in your home, you still have options for tapping into the equity that you've built. And you can do that without packing a single box. First, let's also set the record straight on something. In Canada, when you sell your principal residence, the gain is generally tax-free under what's called the Principal Residence Exemption. And that's a massive advantage. If you bought your home for, say, $200,000 and it's now worth $900,000, that $700,000 growth is not taxable, provided that it's been your principal residence for all of the years that you've owned it. You do need to report the sale on your tax return using Schedule 3, but if it's your only home, the math is really straightforward. That kind of tax-free growth is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools in the Canadian tax system. And yet most people never think about how to strategically use it in retirement. So let's change that today and show you how you can actually use your home equity for income in retirement. All right, let's walk through each of the 5 ways that you can put your home equity to work. I'll give you the mechanics, the tax treatment, and the return on life angle for each one. Strategy 1. Downsizing or right-sizing. This is the one most people think of first. Sell the big house, buy something smaller, and pocket the difference. In many cases, it really is that straightforward. But there's more to think about than just finding a smaller place. Let's use Tom and Diane as our example. Their 4-bedroom home in London, Ontario is worth around $900,000. If they sell and move into a well-maintained condo or bungalow for $550,000, they could free up roughly $350,000 in tax-free cash after transaction costs like real estate commissions, legal fees, and land transfer tax. That $350,000 can be invested inside of a TFSA, a non-registered account, or used to top up their retirement income for years. And because the gain on the sale of a principal residence is tax-free, none of that triggers a tax bill. But downsizing isn't just a financial decision, it's a lifestyle decision. I've had clients who moved into a condo and loved the freedom of not mowing a lawn or worrying about a furnace. And I've had others who have moved and felt like they've lost a part of themselves because they no longer have those things to take care of. So the real question isn't just how much equity can I free up, it's what kind of life do I want to live in this next chapter. And that's the return on life kind of thinking. And it's another element to retirement planning that we really need to consider. One more thing to keep in mind if you're buying a new property, don't forget the land transfer tax. In Ontario, on a $550,000 purchase, you'd pay approximately $6,475 in provincial land transfer tax. If you're buying in Toronto, there's an additional municipal land transfer tax on top of that. So these are real costs that eat into the equity that you've freed up, so make sure you're factoring those into your plan. All right, let's talk about strategy 2, the reverse mortgage. This is the strategy that generates the most questions and the most misconceptions. So let's clear the air. A reverse mortgage lets Canadian homeowners aged 55 and older borrow against the equity in their home without having to make monthly payments. You keep ownership of your home, you keep living there, and the loan is repaid when you eventually sell or move out. In Canada, there are a few primary providers that allow you to access generally upwards of 55% of your home's appraised value, depending on things like your age, location, and property type. The key tax advantage here is that the money you receive is not taxable. It's income that's tax-free. It counts as a loan, not income. That means the additional income won't affect your old age security or OAS, as well as the guaranteed income supplement if you receive it. And it won't push you into a higher tax bracket. All right, time for our retirement reality check. I hear this one a lot. With a reverse mortgage, the bank ends up owning your home. And that's simply not true in Canada. You retain full ownership and title to your property. The bank or lender has what's called a no negative equity guarantee, which means you'll never owe more than the fair market value of your home when it's sold. On average, reverse mortgage customers still have over 50% of their home's value remaining after the loan is repaid. So reverse mortgages aren't for everyone though. The interest rates are higher than traditional mortgage rates, and interest compounds over time since you're not making payments. The amount you owe grows, so if leaving the maximum estate value to your heirs is a top priority, then this might not be your first choice. But if your priority is staying in your home, maintaining your independence, and supplementing your cash flow without having to sell assets or triggering taxable events, then a reverse mortgage can be a powerful tool in the right situation. I've worked with families where a modest reverse mortgage of say $100,000 or $150,000 made a real difference between a comfortable retirement and a fairly stressful one. It gave them the breathing room that they needed to delay drawing down their RIFs, which kept their taxable income lower and protected their OAS. So there are some real tangible situations where a reverse mortgage is a great idea. Our third strategy is a home equity line of credit. If the reverse mortgage is the hands-off approach, a home equity line of credit, or HELOC, is the hands-on version. You're still borrowing against your home's equity, but with a HELOC, you have the flexibility to borrow and repay as needed. And you're making at least interest payments all along the way. Most Canadian lenders will let you borrow up to 65% of your home's appraised value through a HELOC, minus any other outstanding mortgages. So if your home is worth $900,000 and you have no mortgage, you could potentially access up to $585,000 in a line of credit. The advantage here is flexibility. You only pay interest on what you've actually drawn. If you need $30,000 for a home renovation or a medical expense, you draw it. Pay it back 6 months later, and you stop paying interest. It's a safety net that's always there when you need it. There's a strategic use for a HELOC that a lot of retirees don't consider. In years where drawing down your RIF or RSP would push you over the OAS clawback threshold, which in 2026 starts at $95,323 of net income, you could temporarily draw from your HELOC instead. This keeps your taxable income lower that year and protects your OAS payments. And the reason for that goes back to what we spoke about earlier. Accessing home equity is a tax-free income. So you can pay yourself that income without it actually showing up on your tax return. Of course, a HELOC comes with the requirement that many retirees find uncomfortable. You need to qualify. So unlike a reverse mortgage, where pre-approval is quite straightforward and not income tested, lenders lending a HELOC will look at your income and ability to service the debt. So for retirees living on a fixed income, that can be a barrier. And you need to be disciplined. A HELOC is a revolving credit. If you draw it down without a repayment plan, you're continuing to add debt to your retirement, not reducing it. On to strategy 4, generating rental income. This one's becoming more popular, especially in Ontario and British Columbia. The idea is straightforward. You keep your home, but you turn part of it into a source of income. Maybe you convert the basement into a legal secondary suite. Maybe you rent a room to a university student, or maybe you list a portion of your home on a short-term rental platform during the months that you're traveling. The financial upside can be meaningful. Even $1,500 a month in rental income adds $18,000 a year to your cash flow. But there are a few things to be aware of. First, rental income is fully taxable. You'll report it on your tax return, though you can deduct reasonable expenses like a portion of your utilities, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs related to the rented space. Second, you need to be very careful about that principal residence exemption that we discussed earlier. As we talked about in our episode on joint ownership, the CRA pays attention to how your property is being used. If you claim things like capital cost allowance or CCA on the rental portion of your home, you could jeopardize the full exemption when you sell. Most advisors recommend not claiming CCA on a rental suite within your principal residence. And you also want to make sure that the percentage of your home that you're renting out is not too large and reasonable. Third, there's the lifestyle factor. Are you comfortable sharing your home with a tenant? Do you want the responsibilities of being a landlord? For some retirees, the income is worth it, yet for others, the hassle outweighs the benefit. So there's no right or wrong answer. It really just depends on what kind of retirement you want to have. And one more consideration that often gets overlooked: rental income counts towards your net income for OAS clawback purposes as well. So if you're already close to that $95,000 to $96,000 income threshold, adding rental income on top of that could push you over the clawback threshold. Make sure your financial plan accounts for that. Our fifth strategy is selling your home and then renting. This is the strategy that surprises most people. Most homeowners can't imagine becoming renters again. But hear me out, because for some retirees, this is the most liberating option on the list. When you sell your home and choose to rent, you convert 100% of your home equity into liquid, investable assets. No maintenance costs, no property taxes, no worrying about the roof or the furnace. Your landlord handles all of that. And let's do the math on that. Say Tom and Diane sell their home for $900,000. And after costs, they walk away with about $860,000 in tax-free proceeds. They rent a comfortable apartment for $2,500 per month, which is about $30,000 a year. And if they invest the $860,000 and earn a conservative 4.5% annual return, that's roughly $38,700 a year in investment income. So you can see the difference there. They're paying $30,000 in rent, but the investment income they're receiving is $38,700 per year. More than enough to cover the rent and still grow their portfolio. Now, that investment income will be taxable, depending on how it's structured. Interest income is fully taxable. Canadian dividends receive a tax credit. Capital gains are taxed on 50% of the gain. And so the composition of your investment portfolio matters as well. A good financial planner can help you structure this in a way that minimizes the overall tax impact. The emotional side of this one is very real. And I've had clients tell me, Patrick, I've owned a home since I was 28. The idea of renting feels like going backwards. And I totally understand that. But I gently push back and say, renting isn't necessarily going backwards if it gives you the freedom to move forward. No more shoveling, no more property tax bills, no more $15,000 roof repairs, the ability to lock the door and walk away to go on vacation. For some people, that peace of mind is very well worth selling the home and deciding to rent. And if health changes down the road, renters have more flexibility there. You're not tied to a property, you can relocate closer to family, move into a retirement community, or shift to an area with better access to care without the stress of selling a house under a time crunch. All right, so let's put it all together now. What did Tom and Diane actually decide to do? After we walked through all 5 options, they realized that they weren't yet ready to leave their home. They loved the neighborhood, they had grandkids nearby, and the garden was Diane's favorite place to spend a summer afternoon. Selling just wasn't the right fit right now. Instead, we put together a 2-part plan. First, they set up a home equity line of credit as a financial safety net. That way it was available if they needed it for a large expense, or it was a year where their RIF income would push them too close to that OAS clawback line, or perhaps the markets don't cooperate and they would prefer to pull from the line of credit temporarily instead of from the investments. They haven't touched it yet, but knowing that it's there gives them confidence in retirement. Second, they converted their finished basement into a legal secondary suite and rented it to a graduate student for $1,400 a month. That extra $16,800 a year covers their property taxes and most of their home insurance, effectively making their housing costs close to zero outside of utilities. And we documented a future plan. When the time comes, whether that's in 5 years or 10, they'll downsize into a bungalow or condo, freeing up the remaining equity to use it to fund the next phase of their retirement. And that's the thing about home equity. It's not an all or nothing decision. You can layer these strategies over time as your life changes and one becomes more beneficial than the other during that phase. All right, let's bring it home. If you take 3 things away from today's episode, let it be these. First, your home is a financial tool, not just a roof. Whether you downsize, borrow against it, generate income from it, or just sell it entirely, your home equity can play a meaningful role in your retirement plan. The key is understanding your options and choosing the one that fits your life, not just the balance sheet. 2, every strategy has trade-offs. A reverse mortgage gives you cash flow without selling, but it reduces your estate. A HELOC gives you flexibility, but it adds a debt obligation. Rental income boosts cash flow, but it comes with tax consequences and landlord responsibilities. There's no perfect answer, only the right answer for you. 3, the best time to think about this is before you need to. Don't wait until you're in a cash crunch or a health crisis to figure out how your home fits into your plan. A conversation with your financial planner today can save you a lot of stress and a lot of money down the road. Believe me on this one, I have seen it numerous times. And if I can add one more thought, this really comes back to the concept of return on life. The goal of retirement planning isn't to squeeze every last dollar out of your assets. It's to build a life where you have enough to do what matters to you. Whether that's staying in the home where you raised your family or cashing in and spending 6 months a year somewhere warm. The plan should serve the life, not the other way around. If today's episode got you thinking about how your home equity fits into your retirement plan, I'd encourage you to take the next step. Head over to bayswaterwealth.ca/podcast, where you can request a complimentary copy of Financial Success for Retirees. The chapter on home equity walks through each of these 5 strategies with additional examples and planning considerations. And if you found this episode helpful, share it with someone who might be sitting in a similar situation. Asset rich, cash flow curious and ready to explore their options. Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Again, I'm Patrick Briscoe. Thank you for joining me on the Canadian Retirement Roadmap podcast. Until next time, take care.
Trademarks owned by Investment Planning Council Inc. and licensed to its subsidiary corporations. Investment Planning Council is a fully integrated wealth management company. Mutual funds available through IPC Investment Corporation and IPC Securities Corporation. Securities available through IPC Securities Corporation, a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Insurance products available through Patrick Briscoe.